All right, so far we've done while loops and do while loops. So a pre-test loop with the while loop, a do while loop is a post-test, and we're going to do another pre-test loop, but in this one it's going to be a for loop. A for loop um, basically is a pre-test loop, but it's different in the sense that it initializes a count variable or a loop guard variable and does the test um, on the loop guard variable and then updates the loop guard variable on the same line for the while or so for the loop header. So let's go ahead and um, and and write one of these. All right. So we're going to rewrite the same program that we've been working on and rewrite it uh, to the standard of a for loop. Right. Um, we don't need any additional variables, but we're going to have a new counter variable or a new loop guard, and we're going to call that loop guard count. So uh, we'll go ahead and create that for loop. So the for loop is structured like many other uh, decision structures or loop structures. It's a reserved word with argument inside, and then two brackets. And then same as the while loop, if you put a semicolon here, you end the loop and you disconnect it from the main body of the statement. You don't want to put a semicolon here. All right. So for we'll go ahead and say we'll initiate a counter. Or we'll initialize a variable, a counter variable, and we'll call it int count, and we'll set it equal to 1. Right. And then we use a semicolon to say as long as the count is less than or equal to student count, which is the variable we've been using. But we're going to ask for the student count beforehand, right? We're going to assume the teacher or whoever the user is knows how many students are in student count, are in the course. And that's what for loops are for. For loops are a deal for forming a known number of iterations. Now, in this case, we'll imagine you have a teacher, you know how many students you have, you're just trying to input their names into a database. So, student count. And then we're going to iterate the loop guard. So, loop guard is count. We'll count plus plus. All right. And because we need to know what's in student count, or the user already knows what the student count is, and we ask the user that number. We'll go ahead and erase this since we're going to initialize and set student count equal to something by asking the user, and we're going to say system dot out print line where it has how many students do you have in your class, and we'll go ahead and use the repeat string for a different purpose than in the do while loop. We're going to ask repeat. It'll be equal to keyboard dot next line, and so we're going to get the user to tell us how many students are in a class, and then we're input that number. That string is going to be a number, so we're going to have to parse it into an integer. So student count, we'll set student count equal to whatever the integer, we'll call the integer class, parse integer, and then we want it to parse repeat. And that'll be that. And we can actually use this body here. The body of this statement is still good. It's still relatively good. We can still use it, and we're still going to print out the student buffer. All right, and so we don't need student count as it's not a loop control variable anymore. It's really just holding how many students the user inputs is in the class, right? So we'll use that, and then we'll still say we'll ask the user to enter the the name of the student, and then we'll again use student name. Next line, we'll still have the student buffer, and that buffer will print out at the end, and that's relatively the same. What we don't need anymore, we don't need to ask the user, do you have any more students? Because we already asked them how many students are in the course already, so we can erase that. And uh, finally, we need to sort of change these variables, and the student count is no longer a thing, as what's keeping count of what, at least what order the students are in. So this is actually student count here. And then we want to just for so it's visually pleasing and easier to read, we'll put a new line at the end of each one of these iterations. So it looks this looks a lot more compact, and a little bit more efficient. So basically, what we're doing is we're initializing a scanner class, just like we did before. And the scanner class object is keyboard, and we're asking the user how many students are in their course. And then we take their input, the user input, put into the string object repeat, and then parses that object, or the variable, the string variable repeat, into integer, places it into student count, initializes it, and then you will use we initialize the loop guard variable count in the loop header as an integer, and as long as count is less than or equal to whatever the user puts in as the student count in the class, the loops the for statement, the statement body will be executed, and then it iterates the 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 count. Or then we then ask the user in the for statement to enter the username, and then we'll take the next line and then add it to the buffer string. We concatenate it, and every single time it adds in the count, which is also here. It sort of puts the students in order, and then it prints out, hey, this is the user you just put in, and then their name. And then at the end of the file, at the end of the program, it prints out the student buffer, which is where it's storing all the names that we put in. So let's go ahead and, well, first let's clear out the old data that we were processing before, and then we'll run the file. Okay, so one last thing before we start. I guess I want to sort of format this system out a little bit more, and we can do that by just simply stating the students in your class are, and then we'll add in a new line here, and then close that out, and then add this, concatenate the string using the plus operator, and that should work. And we'll go ahead and run it now. So how many students do you have in your class? Let's say 5 students. And of those 5 students, we'll enter their names. And we're going to use Mark is 1, Mary is 2, we'll say Jim is 3, Omar is 4, and John is 5. And then it prints out all the students' names. It says the students in your class are Mark, Mary, Jim, Omar, and John. And we use the for loop. It's a pretty very straightforward and powerful tool in with looping structures, and you can do a lot with for loops. And we can do a lot with loops in general. And in the next video, we will get to the whole reason why we're learning loops for this module. And we're learning loops to do file input and output. So you're actually going to be manipulating text, and you could manipulate byte files using Java.